Hello, in this video I want to talk about teaching the cutting game and how we can use one drill or game so we can teach blast cuts, backdoor cuts, and seal cuts. And the reason I'm going to use what we call Korean passing is because I can teach how we cut when we're on the court, but also how we have to be able to do the same thing from inbounding. So let's move it ahead here and take a look. So this is our classic Korean passing. It's a drill that we picked up from watching Korea use it. And I really like it as a way to start a lot of games approach because it gets the players moving and cutting. So you can see they line up offense and defense, corner, the inbounding spot for when we advance the ball with the FIBA timeout at the end of the quarter or the end of the last 2 minutes of a game, and just at half, usually on just this side of here. So I like to play where they can't go to the backcourt. So player one passes to two, and she's cutting, and she's going to fill the center lane. Okay, player two passes, and she's heading to the right lane. And now we're going to practice this blast cut. A blast cut is when you're cutting straight to the ball and you're beating your defender with a speed cut. So we're getting to practice this blast cut off and inbounds. So there's the blast cut. She's a little slow in this demo, but she's going to blast hard to the ball. And now this player usually fills the left lane. So now we create our floor balance. And one of the things we want to work on is this whole idea on our blast cuts is this whole idea of double gap spacing. We're trying to give space here for number one to penetrate, but it's also for number two or number three to make their blast cuts. So when there's a connection, and this is eye contact, we've made eye contact. This player number two now knows it's time for her to blast cut. So she's going to come and shorten the pass, and we make a single gap pass from the swing to the wing with that good strong blast cut. Now, we could have also made the connection over here. Again, we have a double gap because the swing is not filled. There's the connection. That's the cue for three. She's going to make her cut. And again, we've had her blast cut. And now we're into our pass cut fill. So after one is passed, she's going to run her cut to the smile. We've now see how number two has moved up. I'll run that back because that's important. She's going to keep a double gap spacing. So she doesn't fill right away to the single gap. She keeps the double gap. And again, when there's a connection, she would make her eye contact cut. We see number one did not have an advantage at the rim. She's exit. And again, we've created this same double gap spacing. And there's our cut. And there's our give and go on our good cutting. We've made the pass. Now, number one, a lot of people say, well, maybe she should be staying at three. Well, we have different rules for this. If she's a good three, stay at three. But if it's an unprotected basket, we want to blast cut to that basket and put pressure on the rim. So there we get a nice little over-the-shoulder pass, and we're going to score at the rim. So that was just blast cutting. So that's just basically our pass, cut, fill. And we can usually do that when the defense is not really aggressive and trying to deny. Now, when you start facing overplay defense, you're going to have to teach backdoor. So now we start with the same drill, so we don't have to teach a new drill. We're just teaching the new concept. Rules are pretty much the same, but all of a sudden when we get to here now on this inbounds, we can't blast cut because your number one is denied. So our rule is back cut. And if she's open, she's going to get the ball. A lot of times that may not be open, so our concept is back cut and blast cut. So we want a good back cut to create a new gap, and that allows for the next player to make that blast cut. And this can happen all over the court, front court, back court, mid court, wherever. Back cut, blast cut to fill behind. Very difficult for defenses to defend if the timing is right and we're running hard cuts. So now we get the ball in, and just again, maybe this time we've had a little different spacing. There's our double gap. We've signaled our eye contact. We've signaled the connection. There's our cut, but we were denied. So our rule is back cut. And again, we may have been able to make this pass, but we also have to be aware of here's this help defender. And this is why this back cut, blast cut works so well, because if X1 here helps off and takes away the back cut, then it's going to be very difficult for her to take this on. Switching is a different matter, but if they were switching, it's very hard for the X1 to come up and defend here. So again, maybe we go now again to our blast cut, okay? And now we've ended up with a new situation. We have a single gap. Well, in a single gap, when you're looked at or dribbled at or pivoted at, your rule is to back cut immediately. So we can see that one starts to dribble, that's an immediate back cut, and we know we're going to follow with our blast cut. And again, we've shortened the pass to make it a single gap pass. Now again, I've looked here and I've shown that maybe X2 is fronting number 2 in the post. Well, that's similar to a backdoor. We're throwing it over the top, over the defense that is between us and the basket. So again, we can have our players work on different types of actions or back cutting when they're overplayed. Very important foundational piece. Now we face defense that really doesn't overplay, but really locks you down and prevents you from blast cutting. Now we have to get into sealing. So again, we start with the same drill, we run, and now number 1 starts to realize, I can't get open here, but I have to get this ball. So she's going to use a seal. And we'll notice that she gets perpendicular, she tees up and gives space. She's really presenting this side of her body and making sure she's sealing with her hip, her scapula, and her shoulder blade, and really sitting into that player with her hips especially. And now player 3 is going to pass to a space. She's passing this ball to a space. Now we can set it up. So again, we've created our double gaps, but here's this player playing in a good support defensive position. You might be able to throw a backdoor lob, but that can be a tough pass, and if she's very active, she can recover. So when players are in this support, sometimes we have to run a seal cut. So we're going to go just below the space we want to get the ball. So she's just below the wing and inside, and she's going to post or seal this player and present. Again, she's presenting her bottom leg is higher than her inside leg and presenting a nice target. And on the timing, we make that pass. So we get the ball to the exact spot we want to create those good angles. That's very important. We also see three here is run a seal cut and post it at the rim. She's sealing at her first spot, is sealing at the smile. She make good contact trying to get the ball. If she's not open, she's going to do her second seal is at the block. And you can see at the block, she's much more perpendicular. When she was here, she was much more putting the player on her back. Here, she's given a nice target. Her bottom leg, in this case, be her left leg, is high and presenting a target. She's not putting her back to her. She's putting her side and really sealing again with that hip, shoulder, and scapula. So again, number 2 maybe had a little dribble because the defense was puffing off and taking away and making it look like she was guarding, so she shortened it. Now she makes that pass on the good seal. And now we get, again, work on some of our cutting actions. So anytime we pass, we still want to practice our cutting. So I want to show, too, that cutting is not just on the perimeter. There's cutting needs to happen when we pass inside also. And there we go for a little pass off the Laker cut for the score. So this is just trying to show you how using one drill, the Korean passing drill, we can really work with our players on the 3 types of cuts that we think are important in the game. Now, there will be more complex cuts once we get into screening, but I thought I'd just start with this shorter video here to show this. But I wanted to re-emphasize this idea about players self-organizing. So we have to make sure as coaches we build the environment where they can accomplish what we want. If you don't put rules in, or constraints they call them, players will just do what they always do, and they'll play a lot of sagging defense. They won't cut hard. They won't get the space. So you have to build in the rules of the game to force them to do the skills that you want and that you know will be needed when you play at a higher level. So a couple examples. Maybe I'll say something like you have to get a seal cut before you can score, or defense, you get a point for every deflection. If you're really trying to promote the use of backdoors, you need to get defense to be assertive and jumping in passing lanes. So you need to find a way to reward the defense for doing that. So think about the constraints and really what it is that you want your team to do, and then that way you can guide how the environment will help them self-organize into a positive way of play. Hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you.